It is a musical introduction, but not so much a visual one. Guten Abend, meine gnädigen Damen und Herren. Es freut mich, Ihnen kennenzulernen. Also, that will conclude the German portion of our discussion today. However, I have been here since Dienstag, and I find myself with every passing hour thinking more and more in German. It's been many, many years since I have heard and spoken German, but it's coming back, and I've had a tremendous time thus far. I am looking forward to your questions and your thoughts. I have a tradition of surrendering to the interview process, as it were. I surrender utterly to it, and in the process of responding to your inquiries, I reveal myself to myself. So there's nothing pre-planned or recorded as such. I've done hundreds of these, so I'm looking forward to being surprised. And the reality is, I will discuss anything with you. There are no restrictions, there are no limitations. I'm not going to embarrass any of my colleagues, but if you ask me something, I will answer you frankly, and if I don't think it's appropriate, I will tell you that. I will not lie to you. Every now and again, I may say something in German because it occurs to me, and I hope you'll be tolerant and forgiving if something strange comes out of my mouth. Many years ago, I went to college, first of all, 2 Jahre in München. The University of Maryland had a 2-year program for the dependents of military people, diplomatic people, spooks, business people, Americans, and so there were 400 American students in a 2-year college on McGraw-Kaserne in Munich. And they're some of the fondest days of my life. I came back, that was 1962 bis 64. I went back to America, studied at the University of Maryland. I graduated. I directed television for NBC in Baltimore, and then I was drafted into the United States Army. Some of you may know what happened thereafter. However, after serving for some time as a military advisor in Vietnam, I was badly wounded. And I spent about 6 weeks in a hospital, and then went to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., and I had more surgery ahead of me, but I needed to regain more strength so that I could survive the surgery, and so they gave me convalescent leave. Now, at that time, my father was the director of the German-American Institute in Frankfurt. He was also consul in Frankfurt. So I flew over to be with my parents, and I went to see a concert, Steppenwolf, in Frankfurt, and then I borrowed the car and drove down to Munich to reminisce. And people would come up and say, "Du sprichst fließendes Deutsch, aber every now and then you say something strange." And the reality was that I had been thinking in Vietnamese for so long, if the word came to me in Vietnamese, I would say it. It sounded right to me, but I guess that was kind of confusing to the folks I was talking to. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Who has a question?
Well, probably.
Don't all speak at once.
Oh, there you are.
Hello?
Yeah.
You made some guest appearances in a lot of shows, for example on Star Trek Enterprise as the Zindi private. Did you ever, besides the particular, have met the other cast members, or was the shoot just separate from the other cast members of the show?
We were an ensemble. Now, there were 6 species. 1 is extinct. 2 were CGI. So that left 4 human beings to portray the 2 Zindi primates, myself and Randy Oglesby. We were the Zindi counselors. Scott McDonald was Dodolum, and he was the reptilian, who was hermaphroditic. And I would often joke with him, You are hermaphroditic. That means that when I say to you, go fuck yourself, you can actually do it. Rick Worthy was in the boreal, and as I said, the insectoids and the aquatics were CGI. So they were people sometimes in little black suits with white dots on them. You've seen that process now with Andy Serkis, you're familiar with it. We had a rather unique opportunity. Generally in Star Trek, there is a Bible. So for each of the prior series, Deep Space Nine, The Next Generation, etc., all the alien cultures were very clearly delineated. We knew what their mating rituals were, we knew what their religious rituals were, but there was no Bible for the Xindi, which meant that we as actors got to create that Bible. So we created our culture. And that's unusual attitude, because whereas I'm given a lot of freedom to improvise with other TV shows, if I wanted to change an to a the, I had to get permission from the producer and director before I did it. They did not play games. They were very strict about their scripts. They wanted what was written to be said. And I adjusted to that. So does that answer your question?
Sorry, not quite right. Did you met the other cast members, like the Connie, Linda Park, and so on? Because they didn't appear in the scenes you were shooting.
Well, there were some scenes where we would all be at a conference table, but you're right. We were shot individually. We spent very long days at Paramount. My makeup took 2 hours in the morning to put on, and it took an hour and a half at the end of the day to take off. I shouldn't say the end of the day, the deep into the night. So we would all meet in the dressing room at 6 a.m. and we'd all get put in the makeup and we'd sit around, and then we're going to shoot our scenes. So as professionals, as artists, we were interacting. And we might not be called on a certain day if our scene work wasn't required, if it wasn't going to be filmed. So we formed friendships. We enjoyed each other's company. And as I say, each day we would look at that script and there would be something there that was open to question in terms of, well, how do we feel about it? For example, we were initially called, Randy Oglesby and I were referred to as Xindi humanoids. And I said to the writers, hey, that's your word. I would never regard myself as a humanoid. I am a primate. And I liked when you asked a question, you referred to the Xindi primate. So apparently our diplomatic efforts got into the playbook.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes?
Even though Space Above and Beyond only out for 2 years,
Filmen ist verboten.
was there
Es ist
sort
Filme
of
für
a
Tucker
bond
Smallwood.
of friendship
Okay, dann.
between the cast members that you maybe considered yourself as family? Because a lot of the Star Trek people or from other shows that lasted longer say that they had, due to the long running of the show, some kind of family feeling. Was that true with you?
I think very much so. And in point of fact, we only ran for 1 season. There is a pilot and 24 episodes. I don't know how they broke it up in Europe, but in reality, we only aired for 1 season in America. Space Above and Beyond, or Space 2063, was a very unique show in many ways. At that time, it was the most expensive show on television. Episodes costing $1 million or more. And that was at that time unheard of. We were somewhat embattled, and so we were united as a group of people. I was not in the pilot. I joined the cast slowly and had a rather uncommon progression. I came in as a principal or a guest star in the first episode, and Jim Wong and Glenn Morgan came to me and said, we would love to write more for you if you could find the time. And I said, ask me. We'll find the time. I loved what they were doing. And slowly I became a guest star, a special guest star, and then for the back 9, for the last 10 shows, I was a series regular. And that was delightful. There was an unusual amount of collaboration on that show, and that is a mark of secure artists. When you work with insecure people, they tend not to want to allow your input. They have this feeling, gee, if I let them mess with it, then people will think I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas when you work with artists and professionals that are secure, they welcome collaboration because they know it enriches the product. I was the only person in sight who had ever been to war. I knew what it was to be shot at and to shoot at people. I knew what it was to be wounded. I knew what it was to die. And Jim and Glenn encouraged me to interact with the cast, and they encouraged the cast to interact with me. I was a willing resource to inform them of realities that are not accessible to most people. I took that very seriously. Throughout the years after it had aired, I would go through airports in America, and at that time they had recruiting stations set up in the airports themselves. And I would walk through areas and people would come running out of the recruiting office and run up to me and say, I watch that show every week. I make sure my son watches that show. There was a measure of respect from prior service people, veterans, and active duty people. They intuited that we cared and respected what they did. And that acknowledgement told us that we were getting it right. There is a lot of stuff on the air that is perhaps interesting or exciting, but it's not very accurate. Jim and Glenn had a fundamental respect for the people that serve in the armed forces, and it was reflected in the product that they created. I was going to tell you something about something, but you see, when I surrender myself to the moment, everything else just gets to fly away. So, we had good friendships. They are wonderful young artists, all of them, and have gone on to do important and excellent work. And Christian has raised some beautiful children, and may at some point return to the screen. But it was a very talented group of people, and it was a very great disappointment that the show was not renewed. We had hopes and expectations and very exciting intentions, but for a number of reasons, you know, every souffle does not rise. We were on a network, Fox, that also had purchased the NFL football package, and because America has 3 time zones, sometimes the football game would run long, and that meant that the show would be preempted on that night. So an episode might air in one time zone, but not in the other. They moved it from Sunday to Friday to Wednesday to Saturday. Fans had a tough time just finding it in their TV guide. Those things conspire to make it difficult to get consistent ratings. And ratings are what determine whether a show is worth its price or not. You have to get ratings. Additionally, there was no one in the Fox family or the Fox hierarchy that had a personal investment in the show succeeding and continuing. Sometimes it takes someone to stand up and say, look, I know the numbers aren't good, but I believe in this show and I think we can get a bigger following and this show will pay it back. That means that executive puts his job on the line. If he's wrong, he may lose his job. Now the man who was running it, John Matoyan, was going on to HBO. So he had no investment in the show. He was leaving. When we were shut down, both Paramount and Warner Brothers tried to buy the show so that they could air it. Fox became a dog in the manger. I don't know if you know that Aesop's fable. The dog doesn't want to sleep in the stable. He just doesn't want anybody else to sleep in the stable. So Fox kept us to our contracts to the point where it was no longer possible for Paramount or Warner Brothers to pick us up. And then it released us from our contracts. Sometimes that's the way life goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. I'm going to be talking a little bit about your brief encounter with the Babylon 5 people. I love Babylon 5 myself, as you can see.
You're in good company.
Yes. And I think one of the hallmarks of this is the writing from Joe Michael Straczynski, that even small, minor characters get a good
Exposure, involvement into the...
Yes. And what's your experience with that?
I had shot the first episode of Space, and then I was offered this role on Babylon 5. And I got the script, and I looked at the character of Mr. Ndawi, and I felt, if I do this as Tucker Smallwood, this man is going to seem very contemporary. And I was not comfortable with that. I had done accents on many different contexts. I did A Map of the World by David Hare as a Senegalese diplomat. I had done revoicing work for films set in Africa. I have a pretty good ear. And I said to Michael, I'd like to try Mr. Ndawi as perhaps a man raised in Africa, not raised in contemporary America. And he wasn't sure, but he said, well, we'll give it a shot, we'll see how it feels. And I was able to persuade him. Making that choice helped me form the character.
Yeah.
A lot of times, a character is informed by what he looks like, what he wears, how he sounds, what his rhythms are, what his cadences are. Actors look for a key to give them a grounding so that they become someone other than themselves. And yet you're trying always to be truthful. Now the reality was, those first few days, I started laughing from the time I got into the studio until the time I got home. They are a madcap group of people, Jerry Doyle and Claudia and Peter, and everybody is brute, everybody is witty, everybody is sarcastic, everybody is funny, and they work hard and they like their fun. And I had a wonderful time for that week or so that I filmed Babylon 5. And I hadn't watched it prior to that, but I was so taken by Mira and all of the wonderful actors. And what's special about the casting of that show is these are people that cut their teeth on stage. Actors that have been raised on stage and are comfortable on a stage, in my estimation, always more interesting when they appear on screen. There's just a truth to the way they approach the work, and I felt very comfortable in their midst, and I'm very proud of having had that chance to work with them. So finished the shoot. A couple of weeks later, Space called. They had written some more episodes for me, and then that continued, and I went back, and the rest was history.
Yes. There's among the fans there's a saying that your conversation with Peter was the battle of accents.
That's charming, thank you. I hadn't heard that before.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So let me jump in with a question I had when I wrote about your biography, your writer. You have written about your time at the Vietnam War. A lot written stuff, and you were telling about that. So what was that about?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, what motivated the work? I came home in 1969, autumn. I was badly wounded. I wasn't expected to live. And there was no table of actuarial expectations. People with my injuries don't live, so there's no track record. Doctors really didn't know. There was no medical reason for me to be alive. And that meant that the odds were, they said, maybe 5 years. I accepted that. I was grateful for what time I might have left. And a week before I went to Vietnam, I'd been taken to see a play in New York by a girlfriend, and I was struck by what I saw on that stage. I had seen classical theater, I'd seen Shakespeare, I'd seen musicals, but I had never seen theater so vital and electric in a medium. There was a play called Big Time Buck White that starred an actor named Dick Anthony Williams. You may or may not have encountered his work in your lifetime over here. But I was just dumbstruck. At that time, it would have been silly for me to say, oh, I'm going to become an actor. Who were my role models? I mean, Sidney Poitier, Nat King Cole, and Sammy Davis Jr. That's pretty much about it. But because I didn't know how much longer I might live, and I thought, if I learn acting, then I know how to talk to my actors, and that will make me a better director. The truth of it is, I fell in love with the process of acting. Acting gave me back my humanity. I had been shut down emotionally for some years. I am a very passionate person, I am a very sentimental person, but those emotions and those qualities do not survive well in combat. Combat is a lot of things, but it's not a place where you can be that open. You're not going to survive emotionally. So, becoming an actor and working with the wonderful teachers that I had, like Sanford Meisner and Stella Adler, I regained access to my emotions, and that really was the sign of me being reborn. I became a human being again, and I decided I never want to let that go. I am alive now, fully. And if being emotionally alive means that I am vulnerable, I can have my heart broken, I can have my feelings hurt, so be it. I'll heal, I'll get over it. But I don't want to ever be shut down again. I think feeling is what makes us human beings. And when you don't have feeling anymore, then you're not really that alive. I did very, very well for 10 years. There's a quality or a condition called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And the first word is post. So it means it doesn't happen the next day, or the next week, or month, or even year. There are tens of thousands of young Americans in America right now who are troubled by what they encountered in Iraq and Afghanistan, and some of them already know it. But some of them are going to do okay for a while, and then there may be a strife in the family, there may be an accident, there may be an illness, or they see something, or they hear something, or they smell something, and it will be a trigger. And they will go to that place of vulnerability, and then they are broken. As I said, I did very well for 10 years, and then my wheels began to come off. I was engaged, I was in love, and these things slowly started to dissolve and disintegrate, and I became very depressed. I had very little self-esteem. One of the things that was troubling me was called survivor guilt. I was alive. And a lot of people that I respected and cared for were not alive anymore. And I didn't believe I deserved to be alive. And so I became very dedicated to ending that. I became very self-destructive. I self-medicated with alcohol and drugs. My behavior was self-destructive, motorcycle accidents, gambling. And I wandered for 8 years until 2 veterans who I knew peripherally came up to me and they said, you need to ask someone for help. You're in trouble. And I was finally ready to listen. And I asked for help. And I got very lucky. I got the help I needed. I got better. And I made a promise. I'm going to do whatever I can in the years left to me to make sure that other veterans get the break that I got. You see, there are so many obstacles to getting well. First of all, you have to realize that there's something wrong with you. Secondly, you've got to accept help. We are, as a culture, not people that accept help. We give help. We are hard chargers. We drive on. We shake it off. We rock on. And third, you have to find treatment. And there are not nearly enough resources to treat the people that are in need of it. So marriages break up, relationships with children break up, people lose their homes, they lose their jobs, they are estranged from their families. It's a very sad pathology, and 22 veterans kill themselves every day of every week, of every month, of every year. That's a reality. a couple dozen people who fail every day. Those are the numbers, and that's not going to change. And so, because that breaks my heart, I do whatever I can, whenever I can. Now, part of my therapy, my therapist told me, write down everything you can remember. Everything. And I began to write essays. I would like to be a novelist, but I just don't have those skills. My fiction sucks. But my life has been remarkably interesting. And so I began to write these essays. And over the years, they formed a body of work. In 2004, I was in England at a convention meeting fans. I flew over to Amsterdam, thanks to Diana. And when I came back to England, I called home and I learned that my mother had fallen. And she never really recovered. She spent several weeks in the hospital and then slowly began to deteriorate. And I lost her. And that was very hard for me to reconcile. And I realized as Christmas was approaching, I was slipping back into depression, and I had some more grieving to do. And so, on the spur of the moment, I made a decision on going back to Vietnam, where my life ended. I booked a ticket, and on Christmas Eve, I landed in Vietnam. And on Christmas Day, I went back to the village that I helped defend in 1969. I came back to America after that trip, healed. I shed a lot of tears. It was a Hajj, I call it. People of the Muslim faith go to Mecca as a pilgrimage. It is a Hajj. As a young child, I went to Jerusalem and Bethlehem with my father. He had been a Lutheran minister before he got his PhD. That was a Hajj. And I viewed my returning to Vietnam as a pilgrimage for my soul to try to heal. And it worked. And suddenly I had all these new experiences that I was writing, and I realized I had the substance for a book. And I am a face known to many people all over the world. I've never been in any major city in the world, in Australia and India and Vietnam and Peru and anywhere in the world where I'm not recognized on the streets, because our culture is aired all over the world. And I wanted to put a human face on PTSD. We hear the words. We don't know really what it means. It's difficult. PTSD is stigmatized, and that's why many veterans do not choose to seek help. They don't want their family to know, they don't want their employers to know, or their friends to know, and so they suffer privately in silence. And I wanted people to understand we're just people like you, we're damaged, we're in pain, but you know me as an actor, understand me as a human being. So that is why I publish, because I could. And over the years, I've met many people who have read my book or refer a friend to read the book, and it has been of help to them. I am a resource to people. I speak to veterans on the phone, I exchange emails with them, I meet with them in person. I am always willing to support and encourage someone to get treatment. I've been medicated for the last 12 years. My life is a lot calmer now, and I'm grateful for that. But it's a lot more pleasant to live when you don't hate yourself, when you're not ashamed of yourself, when you believe that you are worthy of having a life. So those are the things that led to my publication of my book. I enjoy writing it. I enjoy living the experiences that I describe in it. When I talk about synchronicity, and I'm a very strong believer in synchronicity, this morning I returned to my room after breakfast and my maid was cleaning my bedroom. And I chat with everybody, and I learned, she said, you're coming from Vietnam. And I thought, she said Greenland? No, Greenland. And I realized, she's from Greece. And I explained to her in Greek, my father was a college professor. He was a Fulbright professor. He taught English at Anatolia College in Thessaloniki. This woman came from Thessaloniki. So those are the kind of synchronicities that happen to me almost on a daily basis. I think of these things as God winking at me. He likes to do that. And I enjoy it every time it happens. Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hello.
Hello. I'm here. Okay, I don't want to be too loud, so I hope it's fine. I would like to know if you ever had a hop for a role where you read the script and you said, this is something which I really can't do, it doesn't fit into my beliefs, or this one is really something which is emotional too difficult for me, or maybe something which is completely stupid and you thought, I don't want this in my CD. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent question. It's several questions, actually. There have been a number of roles that I simply turned out. I was involved in a series in Atlanta, and I was playing a retired officer, and they wanted me to portray him as a crazed Vietnam veteran, and it was not truthful. It was disrespectful. This is a comedy show, and I said, yeah, it was a couple $1 million. I turned down many roles of that sort. It's one of the problems with the condition of PTSD. We are not, as a rule, a danger to society. We're a danger to ourselves. We kill ourselves. We don't go out and blow up a bus or anything like that. We kill ourselves to stop the pain. And I have refused. It's usually lazy writing, ignorant sensationalist writing. It offends me. But you know what? I have never in 47 years, 46 years, done a role that I didn't want to do. If it offends me, if it doesn't move me, I don't do it. And because I don't have a very expensive lifestyle, and I don't have 14 children, and I haven't been divorced 3 times, I don't have to do work that I don't believe in. There's never been a role that, well, frankly, when you talk about fear, I just did several years ago, I did a 6-month run of a play by Cormac McCarthy. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Cormac McCarthy. He wrote The Road, No Country for Old Men, Blood Meridian. Cormac McCarthy writes to the bone. He writes tough, demanding. I can't come up with the right adjectives. He's an incredibly challenging writer, and he wrote one play. It takes place in a locked room, chains on the door between 2 men, one black and one white. The black man is a murderer who has been paroled from prison, and the white man is a college professor who tried to kill himself this morning. And I grabbed him from a subway train and took him to my home and locked him in my home. And I'm going to save his soul. And for the next 90 minutes, we don't leave that stage, just 2 men on the stage, nothing but Sturm und Drang. It's the most exciting, demanding work I've done in all of my career. When I read it, it terrified me, and I always know when it scares me, that's a good thing. That means that there's something good there. A challenge, a chance to learn, a chance to expand myself. And it was very satisfying this late in my career to discover I had the opportunity to do the best work of my career. That's incredibly satisfying. So I always look for work that, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know, but I'm willing to fail for the chance to succeed. Nowadays, I don't do a lot of big studio films. I find the characters more interesting in these films, projects from emerging artists, new filmmakers just coming out of school, full of excitement. A couple of years ago, I was scheduled to shoot this film called Embers. It's a story about a world in which man has been exposed to a virus which destroyed his memory, and memory is gone. And I was very excited about it. A few days before I was to leave, I was offered the role of the CIA chief in Pixels. So I flew to Toronto and shot pixels for a couple of days, and they paid me an absurd amount of money, and I didn't do anything. I flew back to LA, and then I flew to New York, and for the next 10 days, I played this professor who has written a book about history, and he can't read it anymore. He can't remember how to read. And he sees a child in the woods, a feral child who's never learned to read or speak, and he takes him in, and they interact. And that's one of several stories. The film won Best Film in the Newport Film Festival. It won Best Film in London recently. It's playing all over the world. It's in Krakow. If you get a chance to see Embers, I hope you will. I'm very proud of the work. Those are the kind of roles that satisfy me. In a Hollywood film, as soon as you see me on screen, you know everything there is to know about me. I'm going to be the police chief or the governor or the commander, or the general, or the admiral, or something like that. Boom, that's it. That's who he is. He's the authority figure. But in these smaller films, I get to be a human being, flawed. I can fail. I can not know. I'm always certain. That's not a lot of fun. It's a living, but it's not nearly as challenging. I'm going to change the subject here. One of the things I loved about Jim and Glenn in space is, generally in war things, we know about courage, we know about fear, we know about cowardice, we know about running away, but we rarely examine the consequences of command. For every young man and woman that goes into harm's way, someone gave them the order to go do that. And people don't always come back. And there's a consequence to that commander. Even if you did every single thing right, when people don't come home, there's a psychic toll, and you live with that. And God help you if you did something wrong. It's really hard to find forgiveness for yourself. So Jim allowed me to express that in Angriest Angels, or the Have and Have Not. And I was very, very grateful to them to allow me to explore that. I remember receiving a script, and it had me sitting in my cabin drinking single malt scotch and worrying about the Angry Angels. And I sent them an email. I said, I'm happy to drink it. I know it's going to be tea. It'll be something brown in the glass. But I drink rum. I've drunk rum since I was in college. And I'm a naval admiral, a commodore, and naval officers drank grog, which is rum and water combined. And I played Delta Blues. And about 3 hours later, a messenger delivered me a script, and Commodore Ross was sitting in his cabin, drinking rum and playing Delta Blues. That was the unique relationship that I was able to enjoy with Jim and Glenn, and that's why I cherish the experience so much. Now, space came out at a time when the internet was just coming into popular use. Right now, how many of you in here like to watch Game of Thrones? I'm with you. Now, HBO conducts an online interactive discussion following the episode of Game of Thrones. We did that 20 years ago. We created that dynamic because generally in film and TV, you do the work and maybe it's not out for a year or 6 months. However, because of the internet, when space aired, after the show was over, we would go on IRC, online, and we would discuss it, and it became like a theatrical experience. In other words, you do the play, and the curtain comes down, and then you meet me backstage or in the green room, and we talk about the play. I'm hopeful there's a friend of mine in here tonight who's been a friend for 20 years, and yet we've never met. But I can see her, she just waved to me, and she was one of the first people that I interacted with online. Thank you for being here, Susie. So, in those, when I recount experiences like that, I'm trying to express to you how fortunate I've been to have had the chance to meet so many people, to work with so many people, to travel around the world. And I've traveled around the world, and I did it long before I became an actor. I lived in Europe for 4 years before I even went to Vietnam. I love to meet other people and different people. I love to interact. I love to learn from other people. I love to experience other cultures and see different ways to think and different things to believe in. So in that regard, I feel very, very fortunate. Now, I think I answered 2 of your questions. Did I get them all?
Yeah, I thank you. Everything is very kind. I'm very honored to hear your answers.
You're very kind. Jeremy's here.
So there was something in what you just said that's really interesting for me because I like drinking rum a lot. I'm a big fan of rum, and I like to hear the blues. Nobody knows because I'm a punk rocker, but yes, I like to hear the blues. So how important is the music for you in your life?
It's difficult to quantify. I began playing music in college. Well, I began playing music as a child in Greece. I played the violin. I was somewhat of a prodigy. Professor Georgiou wanted my parents to leave me behind. He said, in 4 years, we'll be on the concert stage in Vienna. I was a 12-year-old kid. I wanted to go back to America and eat hot dogs. I didn't want to carry a violin in case you get my butt kicked. I was a small kid and wore glasses. But I had musical gifts, and when I got to college, and I was still a shy kid, I discovered, boy, if you sit around with a guitar, girls will show up. It was a way to create interaction. And I loved the music, and I fell in love with the music from the early part of the 20th century. Music played by black men who could not read music. It was very fundamental, almost primitive. But there was something in it that just compelled me. There was a rough beauty to it. And over the years, I met with some of these men before they died. And so I've been very fortunate. So I play a kind of music that is not very common. I'm not nearly the best in the world at it, but there just aren't that many people that play this kind of music. And I love sharing it. And when I'm in Australia, or I'm in India, or I'm in Peru, I will go to a club, a coffee club, a bar, and if I get a chance to play some blues, I do it. And people always respond. That is the amazing thing. Blues are universal. All over the world, people love blues. So I enjoy sharing the music. I really do. I was a better musician 20, 30 years ago than I am now, but even so, I enjoy it, and I enjoy sharing it. There's another thing. I was shot through the throat, among other places. My vocal cords were paralyzed. When I was wounded, I was on a 7-man patrol with mercenaries, and I was the only man on that mission that could speak English. I carried the radio. If I passed out or died, then we all died, because I was the only person they were going to come to extract. And so the doctor said, I have yet to meet a doctor who won't tell me, someone with my injuries will be dead within 10, 15 minutes, certainly unconscious. Because I knew what the realities were, I stayed alive for almost 50 minutes until I got a rescue force in. And the point was, I couldn't speak because my vocal cords were paralyzed, but I could whisper. Now, if you go online to YouTube, you will find a filmed account of me describing what happened that day. I did it for my theater a few years ago. It's the first time I've ever talked about it publicly. It's a very private experience, a memory. It's nothing that my family ever knew about, really. It would have been painful for them to know, and I didn't want to cause them pain. But I now, my voice may sound, my voice is cured by years of rum and Pall Malls, but the quality of my voice lends itself to blues. I'm not a Broadway baritone. You're not going to mistake me for Robert Goulet. But my voice lends itself to the kind of music that I like. It's a rough, edgy, resonant sound. And I can get away with phrasing in this genre that I couldn't do. I can't sing opera. I can't sing, Broadway ballads. I've done it. I've been on Broadway and I've sung. But here's the question this time. How effective were you, Tucker? So I've been a little disappointed in that 30 years ago, 20 years ago, somebody would have brought a guitar to a gathering this size. I was a little disappointed that no one did, because I'm here with James Morrison, a dear friend, and he's a fine musician in his own right. And we would have been happy to play you guys some music if there had been an instrument for us to do it. But sadly, no one brought a guitar, so not this time, folks.
I only have a harp. I only have a harp.
Well, no, neither one of us play harp. In fact, we call a harmonica a harp.
Well, honestly, I wish someone would bring a guitar right now so we could have this experience here on stage. I really would love to hear it. So, anyone with a guitar here?
Apparently not.
Oh, that's a pity.
So it goes.
So, yeah. So hopefully on another occasion. So I take the second choice. Have you any recommendation in rum for me? What is the best brand?
Well, first of all, I drink only quality liquor. I don't mix my liquor, I don't dilute my liquor with ice cubes. I drink it neat, because I like the flavor of the liquor. And if you don't like the flavor, then don't drink it. If you gotta put Coca-Cola in it, or put ice cubes in it, or lemonade, or Kool-Aid, you probably don't want, you just want to get drunk. I like the flavor of a fine single malt scotch or rum. I only drink, I won't say I only, I tend to drink clear rum. I find that the darker rum, I haven't had a hangover in many decades, but I learned early on, the additives that they put in to make it dark, by and large, upset my brain, and I woke up with a headache and hangover, and I don't enjoy that. However, if there are, there's Seals, there's Black Seal, and there's Myers, which are fine rums, but I found the best, the most flavorful, there's lots of wonderful rums out there, but Eldorado makes a 12-year, a 15-year, and an 18-year rum. The 18 is more than $100 a bottle, but it is as nuanced as any fine cognac. It has a nose like any wonderful, well-matured distilled liquor, and so I like rum and I like single malts.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if there is no question more, I think it is nothing better. Oh, there is that question. I'm sorry. Haven't seen you in the dark.
Hello. When you get a guest star appearance on any show after a successful edition, how do you prepare for the role? Do you create a background for that character, or do you go to the producers and ask them what they want for this character, or any other options that you might explore?
Well, are you asking me before I have the role or once I have the role?
Once you have the role, you want the audition, and then you will have to prepare for film.
Yes. Okay. You're talking about the process now of creating a character.
Yes.
Fine. My technique is very specific. There are 3 disciples of Stanislavski that are famous in America from the 40s into the 60s and 70s. They are Sanford Meisner, who headed the Neighborhood Playhouse and the Group Theater, Stella Adler, and Lee Strasberg. I had the good fortune to work with all 3 of them. So I have a technique that works for me. It might not be accessible to everyone else, but whenever I receive the sides, which are pieces of pages of dialogue, yes, they take place in a moment. But this character had a life last week and last year. This character has relationships and friendships and parents and children and responsibilities. And I have to create this world for him, because in my training, the process of acting is doing. I don't pretend we're the shit, but I can do many things very truthfully, and I will find an activity that allows me to bring a moment to life. And if I take this class, and I smell it and I drink it, I have done that. I didn't pretend to do it, I did it. And if that is something that informs the words that will next come out of my mouth, then you will know, you will feel that it is authentic. I'm not pretending. I am being. The craft of acting essentially is behaving truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And the gift of any actor, the genius of any actor, is the choices he makes. Hamlet has been done tens of thousands of times, but it's the same words. What makes every performance different is the choices that each actor made, what those words mean to him, how he feels about who he is talking to. Is he angry? Is he jealous? Is he horny? Is he impatient? Is he disbelieving? Is he suspicious? You make choices that inform the dialogue and allow you to feel authentic in those moments. And then I will get a certain amount of energy from the other person. I connect. I take my attention off of myself and I put it on that person. Now, as I said earlier in talking about Michael, I had the character, I had been cast, and I went to Michael and said, I would like to do this with an accent, with your permission. I want to play this character as a blues man. He might not be, he might not talk as clean, you know what I'm saying? He might have a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? A different attitude. He has a different kind of rhythm. As opposed to a military cadence. Every character has a cadence, he has a rhythm. And you find that rhythm. That informs how you speak, how you listen. And listening is just as important as speaking. It's not, my shit, okay, now, okay, yeah. Okay, now it's my turn. No, that's not acting, that's masturbatory. It's not very interesting either when you see it. You can tell the difference between sucky acting and good acting. When you look at somebody on that screen and you are compelled and you believe, then that person has succeeded in persuading you that they are authentic. So how anyone approaches the role is dependent upon the presence or absence of technique.
Thank you very much.
Religion.
So, wie ich gerade gehört habe, hätten wir sogar noch die Zeit für eine weitere Frage. We still have the time for... No? Oh, I'm sorry. We're done. I heard we're done. So, thank you very much. I hope we could end with something about rum. So, but he ruined it for me. But anyway, thank you very much. It was very, very